I was delighted when I heard that Thatcher died. I cheered. I really cheered. I was really, really happy. My wife, who's African, was saying, "Oh, that's wicked. That's wicked. Why do you hate her so much? How can you have so much hatred in your heart?" I tried to explain, which she couldn't really understand. You had to be there. You had to have suffered through what you did. I was interviewed on BBC Newcastle this morning, and the interviewer was determined to get me to admit the good things Thatcher did. But you opened the Nissan car plant in the north east, look at all the jobs that bought. Yeah, what about all the coal mines that you closed down in Durham and Northumberland? Twice as many bloody jobs as the Nissan car plant. And what about all the council houses that you let people buy? I said, what, the same ones that are being repossessed now because people can't afford to pay their mortgages? I'd had enough of this bloke, and I just said, look, I said, you obviously want me to say something nice about Mrs. Thatcher. So I've got one regret about Mrs. Thatcher. I said, our family have decided they're going to cremate her. Now me, I promised myself I was going to dance on her grave. So that's my regret about Thatcher, and it's the only regret. In 1993, when they closed my colliery down, a lad that I had stood on the picket lines with went to his bathroom, poured petrol over himself, set fire to it. He couldn't face the future. He'd been through so much, and now they took his job away. A pit, by the way, that still had 300 years worth of coal underneath the ground that we could have got out, which is lost forever. That's another thing this idiot said to me this morning. Well, they can just open a new coal mine up, can't they? I said, you don't understand how coal works. You can't just open up a new coal mine and get that coal out. It's gone forever. You've lost it. The miners' strike was a really difficult year, but I'm really proud that I took part in it. I'm really proud that I'm really proud that I was prepared to go to jail for my principles, briefly, admittedly, but I still was prepared to go to jail for what I believed in, and that was the right to picket. They banned me off every picket line in the British Isles. Every picket line in the British Isles. I still went to the picket line, but I just had to keep, a low profile instead of walking in the big gob and shouting so much. I had to sort of try and shout a little bit quieter, really, and sort of work around people and tell them, come on, let's go and do this. It was union leaders, and it was our own union leaders. And when I say our own union leaders, I don't mean from other unions, I mean from my union. People talk about Arthur Scargill, right? It was nothing. Scargill was a figurehead. Scargill had an ego that was rampant, but he had nothing to do with me. I didn't do what Arthur Scargill told me to do. I did what I thought was right, and I knew that we had to win that strike by any means possible. And if it meant, and after the first week of the strike, every coal mine in Durham and Northumberland was out on strike. We could have just sat down and said, all right, then, that's it, we're solid. We didn't. We went to Scotland. I even managed to get into Nottingham in one of the most hairiest rides of my life, where I went through every back road in the county by Nottingham, and went to a colliery called Annisted and Newstead, got to the colliery, 12 of us, and this policeman came up and he said, you lot, stand there, shut your fucking mouths. If you say a fucking word, I'll arrest you. Just stand there and say nothing. Don't you call these decent working men any names, otherwise you'll be straight in the back of the van. That was the kind of intimidation we got. That was right at the beginning of the strike. It continued all the way through. We came to my pit. We had scabs going in. We had to fight our own men. And if we'd got the support of the I came to one of these meetings a few months ago, and a woman said, yes, but we collected for you. We collected for you. We supported you. Yeah, it was great, thank you. The tins of beans and stuff, it was wonderful, but that's not what I wanted. I'd rather starve. What I wanted was every trade union in this blooming country to realise what was happening and saying, we're not going to work, we're going to support the miners, and that strike would have been over and done with months before. It would have, and like somebody's just said, the rail workers came out, they bought them off. The dockers came out, they bought them off. The steel workers, they bought them off. And we were left to stand on our own. And God, the fact that we lasted a year is miraculous. At my colliery, it was 2,500 men. By the time we went back to work in the March, there was 6 buses going into the colliery every day with 50 men on it. 50 men out of a workforce of 2,000. I call that solidarity. I call that staying out. And I take my hat off to every single man, woman and child, because it wasn't just the miners. When we were getting arrested, when I got arrested, my wife went on the picket line because I was supposedly couldn't go on. The women were fantastic during the miners' strike. You talk about women's liberation, the miners' wives were liberated. Unfortunately, my marriage ended, as did lots of miners' marriages ended, because the women realised there was more to life than being married to men. About it is, I had 2 daughters at the time, who were 10 and 12 years old, and I remember taking them to the picket line one day. On an afternoon, I didn't want them to see any violence, and I just wanted to point out, and I knelt down beside the girls and I said, look, see those buses that you can't see anybody in? I said, the people in there are called scabs, and those people are trying to get your dad to go back to work. I said, but I'm not going to go back to work, and neither is anybody else. And we walked away from the colliery, and a police van pulled up beside us. And an inspector with all the braid on his helmet let out and said, oh, you, what were you saying to those fucking kids? I said, I beg your pardon? I said, things haven't got that bad, I have to tell you what I'm doing to me own, speaking to my own kids. He said, tell you something then, mate. Those kids, something bad happens to them. Don't call for us, call for Arthur fucking Scotland. And he drove off. My daughter now, my youngest is a mental nurse. My eldest daughter is a primary school teacher, and my ex-wife is a social worker. So we've all kind of, and I became a teacher as well. Retired now because I've got arthritis and I can't stand up in front of the kids anymore. It's really important. We're talking about Thatcher's toxic legacy. That's what she did. That's history. We're making a film about it because the people who were involved we're all starting to die off now. I was 33 when that strike started. I'm 62 now. So I'm making a film called Still the Enemy Within. If you're in a trade union branch and you haven't already done it, support that film. It's an important historical document that young people especially need to see and listen to the experiences of people like me who went through that strike. Miners' wives, kids who went through that strike, they need to learn the lessons from that. And as for this lot now, Mr. Cameron and Co., the most frustrating thing in my life is, what the hell's going on? Why is nobody fighting back? I say, 1 day of action. Oh, whoopie-doo. That's going to change things, isn't it? A 1 day of action. We'll all march around London with placards and then go home for 6 months and go and do it again. Changes nothing. The only thing that will get rid of them is united action from the working class people of this country. And that's what we need to do. We need to organise and say, we're not putting it up with it. Your bedroom tax, you can stick it up your arse when it pays. You can stick everything that you're trying to do, sending cancer patients to work because they're fit to work and then they die. There was a man today I read about in the newspaper who he can't even afford to pay for his son's funeral. He's had to go into debt and he's having to pay it off at £20 a month. £2,500 apparently cost you to get cremated. And yet we're spending £10 million on having a ceremony for a monster. Because she was. I'm not going to mince my words. I'm not going to say I don't care about speaking ill of the dead. Spit on our grave. Yeah.